Hi, folks. Very good evening to all of them who are watching us for this session, this masterclass, this series, Think Like a Leader. So, thank you so much for joining. And if you're watching this now or later, stick with us till the end because we've got, really exciting things coming up for your career to build in tech. So, today we have with us Mayur. Mayur is the CTO and co-founder at Sigmoid Analytics. Hi, Mayur.
Hey folks, welcome.
I hope I am audible to you loud and clear.
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope the same is true for me.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. I can see you smiling in the morning itself. So
Yeah,
Mayur has
perfect.
joined us early in the morning from straightforward USA, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah, New York.
New York, to be very specific. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for this energy early in the morning. People have also joined us evening. It's evening already in India, so we
yeah,
are here. People are still joining us through different channels, and we're really excited to start this conversation with you and understand what how somebody can build a career into tech because you've been on the other side of the screen itself, right? So why if
sure.
without any further delay, I would just put it across very subtly to your plate, and please, if you can introduce yourself and your journey of starting Sigmoid Analytics.
Sure. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for folks joining in during this sort of holiday season. I know it's a lot of downtime for a lot of people, but a lot of exciting time for some of you young folks as they're preparing to kind of start their career in tech. So, sort of welcome everyone. So just a little bit about me. I'm Mayur. I head technology and solutions for Sigmoid. I'm the CTO of Sigmoid. Been in the industry for about I think 12 years now. I started in 2009. Graduated from IIT Kharagpur. Worked in Adobe Systems for about 3 years before I started this out with Lokesh and Rahul, who are the two other co-founders in the company. Um, we basically started out Sigmoid as a consulting firm. We worked in a variety of things. We did some mobile app development, we did some full stack development, and also worked a lot in data. But then, just within like a couple of months, we realized that there is a lot of opportunity in data, and we chose to verticalize in that. I think just about 6 months in operations. We also had some advantages to do that. I mean, I worked in exclusively in data during my stint in Adobe, and Rahul was consulting in machine learning space from the early days. So machine learning and data, there was a unique synergy between us to kind of start out and verticalize in that space. And then we also saw a lot of opportunity in the market, as I talked about. So so that's how we kind of chose to verticalize our consulting in Sigmoid, and we are still kind of growing very rapidly in that space. Today, we are a team of about 500 people, based out of primarily out of Bangalore, but kind of spread over India as we're still sort of in hybrid mode of development. Apart from that, we have offices in the Bay Area, in Dallas, in New York, in Lima, Peru, Amsterdam, and our latest office we just opened in London, just like I think a month ago or so. So kind of very cross geo presence from that standpoint as well. So yeah,
Yeah, that's very interesting. Starting your journey overall now it's widespread across the globe itself. I can hear a lot
yeah,
of names right coming in. New offices opening up in UK and London. So that's very fantastic and fascinating about, the people want to hear this, right? Candidates want to hear a journey like this. So it's always, I thanked you before, I thank you now for, keeping that smile and coming up with such an excitement early in the morning. So adding up to that, so now that you have already spent more than a decade into the tech space, right? So what would you suggest? What are the job roles and position fresh graduates can pick up from the tech or IT industry? If you can put some
sure.
highlights.
I mean, when I started out, I think in 2009, iPhone was just coming out. I think it just come out in 2007, but it had like hit India market around that time. And then simultaneously in the enterprise space, Hadoop had launched, and it was like a very massive force for data transformation in large companies and also cloud computing. AWS had launched just about around that time, started gaining traction in startups. So it was a very exciting time then, and it was like almost like you cannot go wrong. No matter which industry you put your hands into, you would either get into cloud or Hadoop or iPhone or app development and so on, right? um, I think now is a very similar time. Just from an industry standpoint, I see like you can see Chat GPT-3 like sort of picking up, and we are all as an industry transforming towards the EV space, and so there is a lot of new technology sort of innovation that's happening in the industry now in very dramatically different directions per se. So kind of very exciting time again to be in technology from my kind of viewpoint, like it was when I started out. So I think in that sense you can't go wrong no matter where you go. But I can put some of my thoughts on how I chose my technology track, and what are the ways to kind of go forward in this. So uh, I think as I pointed out, right? So technology space is pretty wide, and you can actually go no matter where, but you can. It's very important to look back and then connect the dots than to look forward. So you don't want to go into a space that's pretty saturated and popular right now, because when you're entering as a graduate, you are looking at a long-term career, and you want to be at a good place 10 years from now, and right now you want to focus your energy in learning as many possible things as you can. So not making an aim that I want to go here and I want to learn only this and not anything else is not a good way. Like the way to grow is to kind of get a very diverse set of experiences, and some of it can come from your company that you're working in, some of it can come from courses. So it can be a very kind of wide way to learn. But my focus at this early stage would be to work in a company that gives you very wide exposure, whether it's app development, whether it is back-end development, whether it's full stack. So try to work in a company like that, which will give you sort of these different sets of exposures early in your career, and kind of grow. That's how I grew. I worked in a lot of startups, which gave me that kind of exposure. And then that's what I would suggest that you also do the same. So work in an industry that's growing fast, work in an industry that's giving you a lot of experience and widespread exposure to technology space would be my 2 cents at this point.
That's great. Mentioning about startups, so I have started my journey into startups. I've always worked into startup organizations, so it's really fun. You get
Yeah,
to play different roles at different point of times, and it's like you're
exactly.
learning a lot, right, every day. So it's not like an larger MNC where you are stuck with one role, right? So when you go
I think
about startups, it gives you wide range of opportunities. You can play different roles at different times because you know there's a small team working towards one goal, and trying to hustle down and just wrap up things. So it's very fun in a startup environment as well, but no comparison when it comes to larger MNCs, and then what comes up with them. So it's always fantastic. One might choose. You have already given us guidance about how to choose a career into tech itself. So
yeah.
now that you have highlighted a couple of growth opportunities and the roles that you have mentioned. So what are the career growth opportunities of all the roles that you have mentioned, like full stack or anybody if somebody chooses out front end development, back end development, any sort of roles if you would suggest?
Right. I think what I can tell you from my experience, right? Uh, how tech will look like 10 years from now is actually very, very hard to predict. Like a lot of the roles that we are working on right now, like ML engineer, there's like data operations engineers. There's so many roles that have emerged now, which if you were to ask me like in 2009, Mayur, what are the top three roles right now? Nobody would tell you that an ML engineer is like the highest paid role in the industry or something like that. It's very hard to predict, sort of sitting here, what roles would look like in the future. So again, I will give you sort of some general guidelines, and then kind of, we can take it from there and as the industry evolves. Um, I think one role which I hope will continue to remain is a startup founder. You can always start your own kind of company and then set things up. So very unorganized roles, but I can tell you. So this is like unorganized, but I can talk a little bit about some of the organized or sort of predefined roles that exist in the industry, right? Now we all know about sort of the technical architect role. It's a very common role, an easy role to look forward to when you are like young, because I look forward to some of these technical architects when I kind of started out, because you get to learn the most from them and they have the most fundamental understanding. And I also think there is a sort of a professor bias, because when we graduate out of college, they are the closest to our college professors from a knowledge base and intellect and understanding standpoint. But I think a large roles, like when you actually do sort of a statistical analysis of the people in the industry that you are talking to or that you're interacting with years ahead, a lot of those roles are actually at the mix of business and technology. The roles that I'm talking about look like business analyst. They could look like product managers. They could look like account managers. They could look like sales engineers. So these are all roles that sit between the mix of technology and business, and they basically interact with how technology can impact business and grow business, right? I think this is a common blind spot for people who are starting out, because it requires a mix of functional, like many cross-functional skills, and we don't get visibility into what these roles do, or don't really have a direct lookup relationship with them, because we are working in technology. I don't know how to interact with customers right now, or how to actually grow the business that we are working on. So I think that's one like a large area of opportunity that's generally not visible to people. And I think it's very important to get understanding of what each of these roles do. And again, a startup is a very great way, just like you rightly pointed out, right? Like 99, by its very nature, 99.9% of the roles of a startup don't exist a year ago. Like when you start out, like 99% of those roles don't exist. So when they don't, there is a vacuum there, and as the startup actually grows, it creates opportunities for you to experience some of these roles. So as an example, you would get in front of customers and would get a chance to build relationships with customers. And startups also want you to build that relationship with customers, because that role is actually very valuable, where you are interacting with customers, gathering requirements, and then delivering it to the team. This same role is called different things in different companies. In product companies, it's got a product manager role. In a enterprise company, it may be called an account manager role. So the role may be called different, but you're basically interacting with customers and technology and bridging the gap together. And o- often one of the mistakes that we make is to stay away from the other aspects of technology, like the business interaction. But I think it's a big mistake, and it's very important to like really step into that role, and startups give you a very unique opportunity to do that. And then there's also like the people aspect of it. When you actually see forward and look at engineering managers, these engineering managers give you a lot of exposure into how to mentor people. Again, startups obviously provide you a lot of opportunity to do that, because the team is growing, and as many people as you can mentor, it's a lot of value for both the company and for you as an individual. But that's another thing, and another skill set that is, I think, very undervalued, which is how many people you can interact and mentor. And that helps you develop this mentorship bone, or the skill set that can help you grow into engineering management later in your career. So many different aspects to grow. I think the most important one that I would suggest that you follow, or kind of pay attention to, is how the technology landscape is interacting with business. And step into those roles as you get opportunities, and kind of really understand how it's ticking, basically, as an overall individual. uh, did that make sense, Shakti? I think as kind of Shakti joins in back, I can talk a little bit about how to choose some of these careers, or how to get sort of exposure into some of these spaces. So I think just as a individual, when you actually start growing into these roles, some of the most important things to look at is how you can get access to sort of some samples of these roles. So, because as I said, right, these are very cross-functional skills. Some of them are reliant on interacting with customers. Some of them are reliant on getting kind of mentorship, or giving mentorship out to individuals, and some of these are reliant on actually like growing your technology skill sets or becoming more architect oriented and so on. So what you want to do is basically, as you're young in your career, get exposure to at least small bites of it, or kind of put forward to your seniors that you would like to get exposure to this. And I can tell you as a startup owner that the management or your seniors would really love for you to actually gain some of these experiences and also to kind of handle some of these workloads, because very few people show the eagerness to be able to do that. um, I mean, and one of the easiest ways is to kind of really either like work in a startup where some of these opportunities and some of these calls with customers or some of these mentorship opportunities keep showing up. But even if you don't, other ways to do that is to basically work in like internship positions into some of these startups or larger companies. A lot of these roles, which are like cross-functional, which deal with technology and business, are available in form of internship, because again, not a lot of people know how to navigate to these careers. In our company, there are many roles available for kind of the account management, junior account management positions, junior sales positions, or core technology in the data ops field. So many of these sort of cross-functional skills are also available as internships that you can delve into. Some of the other ways that actually you can get exposure to these careers is also through sort of these new online courses that are available. Um, I typically don't suggest people to take formal education unless you have a very good reason behind it or you really want to step up your skills. So I typically suggest against formal education, both because it's expensive and also it is very very time consuming, and kind of puts a hold in you getting exposure to enterprise or real world engineering exposure. So I typically suggest people against it, but some of these courses which you can attend or work with along with your career, I think have a lot of value, because they're generally very less expensive, they give you very similar exposure, and you basically don't put a full stop on your career, you're still growing your career or investment in the company. So I would very strongly suggest that one way or the other you get exposure to these different tracks and interact with people who are doing really well in some of these spaces to understand how they're doing, and if this is a career choice that is kind of interest to you as an individual. So I think Shakti is having some technical issues. So uh, uh, let me check with him if he's still available. Uh, I'll be back in just 2 minutes. So I think Shakti is having some technical issues. Uh, in the meantime, I can try to kind of talk a little bit about what we do at Sigmoid, and hopefully it's something that can be useful for you folks who are looking to kind of start off a career in technology. I think just from a Sigmoid standpoint, we are a company that is focused in the data space. Uh, we work exclusively in. Hey Shakti, can you hear me? I think you're on mute. So I just took the time to kind of introduce the
Can you hear
audience
me?
to Sigmoid. Yeah, I can hear you, Shakti. So I think I was just introducing the audience to Sigmoid because I think you dropped out. So I just finished the question and I moved into kind of the Sigmoid introduction. So let me finish that while you can set things up on your end. I can see your video is still choppy and stuff like that. Uh, so talking about Sigmoid, we work exclusively in the data space. This includes working in cloud scale data engineers. So as an example, We regularly, I think on a yearly basis, we process close to about 2 petabytes of data through the systems that we have created. We also run large scale machine learning models. I think um, close to about 120 machine learning models have been productionized through the work that we do. And we basically create large scale platforms for companies in the CPG space, everything from Colgate to Reckitt Benckiser and many kind of companies in the CPG and brand space. Um, so as a company, we basically do everything related to data, like I talked about. So this starts with uh, kind of business analysts, which basically interact and create dashboards or insights for customers and data, to machine learning engineers, which actually build machine learning models for customers, to sort of data engineers, which productionize those machine learning models, build data pipelines for customers, as well as we basically build operations teams, which are data ops teams, which monitor these models, monitor these data pipelines, and create CI/CD environments for the data space. We work with a very wide landscape of technologies, from cloud in AWS to we were some of the early testers in Databricks. We are doing some of the initial prototype work and development work with Dremio. So we work with a wide palette of technology space, both in the cloud and the open source, to help companies deal with their data problems and really kind of excel. Data is the new oil for most of the organizations that we work with, and we help them tap into that as a lot of them digitalize as a company, as well as their customer touch points and endpoints also digitalize overall. So that's a little bit about Sigmoid. We have many internship and direct joining opportunities across wide space. We're growing really, really fast. I think in just last 2 years, we added close to about 300 people to the organization. So we are growing incredibly fast, and we have many opportunities both in Bangalore as well as abroad in US and Europe geographies. So uh, kind of hope you find kind of a good opportunity working with us, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about us. So now we welcome back Shakti. Hey Shakti, is your internet more stable now? I Can you hear me, Shakti? Can you hear me? Hello? I think Shakti is still having internet issues.
Mayur, can you hear me? I'm really sorry for the inconvenience.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It has started to rain out here, so hence the network issue has started.
Okay. I think you can turn off your video because I don't know if your bandwidth can support it.
For sure, I have done that. Sorry, guys. Sorry for whosoever has joined us, and we are, we just suddenly started facing this issue because it had all, you know, started running out here. So it's unpredictable out here in Bangalore. If Mayur already knows that. Uh, so now, if you've already guided people on Sigmoid, and you've given the overall overview about Sigmoid and how you what you guys do out there, right? So I hope I just have to check it now every time I'm audible to you and other folks.
You are. I will let you know if you're not. It's okay.
Sure. So adding up to the last question that we had there, uh, so how can you what would you choose if you were there as a student nowadays, either a startup or a larger MNC? Which one should be a stepping stone for a career in tech?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, it's a very personal choice, and the personal choice may also be determined by like your own personal conditions. Like it's like, let's say you get a job offer from an MNC, would you wait that out to go to a startup just because you want to go to a startup and so on? So not a lot of people have the financial means to be able to do that or make that choice. So I would say uh, there is no one right answer to the question. I can tell you pros and cons of both, and you can naturally try to gravitate your career towards the choice that makes the most sense for you. Um, I think there there are a lot of careers which go towards specialization. So let's say you want to actually work on core internals of Linux kernel, or you want to really work on EV sort of navigational technology, or like the mapping space and so on, right? There are very very few or let's say you want to work in chip development and sort of really core work around it. There are very very few startups which give you the opportunity to work in such core spaces, and one of the best ways to kind of work in such areas is to work with a large MNC. Like I doubt outside of the, let's say, the large four, Intel, Qualcomm, or something else, you can actually work on chip design or like formal engineering and stuff like that, because startups do not have the means to be able to really create like these spaces where you can work on these niche core technology spaces per se. So if you're looking to do something like that, or this is something that really interests you, or let's say tomorrow you want to really go for a PhD in some of these spaces, I think working in a large MNC is a logical choice. Like startup may be too distracting for you to be able to focus that. That said, if you are able to actually work in a startup which is doing really good work in this, started by people who have very very huge experiences in this space, I think that might be best of both worlds. You may get good understanding of these niche spaces and also work in the cutting edge of these spaces per se, where you could get early exposure. So that's kind of I think a very good reason to get exposure to MNCs, and that's true for any kind of specialization you want to do. Like when I was working in Adobe, there were many people who were around us who were focused on working in kind of visualization and image editing space in a very niche space there, and it's hard to get that kind of exposure anywhere else in the industry that you can get in Adobe, with the amount of patents and other things that are being launched by Adobe in that space, right? On the other side, kind of my personal choice and what I did early in my career was to get exposure to a lot of startups. And these were startups in which I did like 1 month internships. I did like 2 month, 3 month courses. So it doesn't matter like what kind of exposure you get, but the most interesting piece about that was that I used to get very very wide experiences. So one of the things that I was doing was like one day I was working on full stack development. Later on in that week, I was actually working on scaling MongoDB because it was not scaling up to the level and the cost efficiency was not up to the mark. And then later on, I switched gears and moved into sort of reporting space to kind of work in sort of large scale reporting system for the startup, which can be used to analyze the data that is being generated by the website. So I was working in a wide variety of space, and it's interesting that some of that actually added up to my moving going into Adobe and still working in the data space, which was a very niche work in Adobe at that time, because in a startup I had gotten exposure uh, to the data space, and it was very hard to get other engineers who had not yet gotten that exposure there. So long story short, I think it's to each his own, their own constraints. But my suggestion would be to go ahead with, if you're looking for doing specialization, go with a large MNC. If you're looking to get a wide exposure, and which is kind of, in my opinion, highly recommended, then go with a startup. Use that opportunity not to just specialize in one space, because startups aren't the best for that, but to actually get a wide set of exposure, interaction with customers. So everything that the startup exposes you to, be take it with the spirit, and work there on that side. So that would be my 2 cents uh, on that side.
Great to hear that. There's a spice of startup ecosystem in your journey, and also you've given insights on one should eventually can think of choosing an MNC as well, right? So that's pretty much what gives us a sense of how we can look forward, our career, either to choose it and go ahead into tech space, or starting from a startup organization, and give it a diversified role where you are, you someday you are managing a team also in your early careers, and eventually you can always take up a role at MNCs. So adding up to that, means there's a small question coming up in my head, which is how should students pick up these careers, like either in startups or in MNCs? Should we go ahead with internships, take up a online course, or what? How should we move ahead from here?
I think my best, there are two, like, I think, standard ways that you should start off with. I know that we try to do, like, again, coming from a formal education background like a college and others, we always feel like we should do a lot of groundwork before we go ahead with this sort of final interview or the final test, or and so on. My strong suggestion would be to, like, the biggest thing that you can do for your own career is just give a lot of interviews. Like, identify like a core set of 20 or 30 companies that you really want to apply to, and then just keep interviewing with those companies as often as they would give you exposure to, right? Because that introduces you to the company's HR, and you are put on their radar because you are genuinely interested to kind of really talk to those companies. And B, you just, there's no other better practice than just giving interviews in kind of a formal setting than anything else. So if you are looking to land a career in a particular area, or even if not in a particular area, but you have these sort of targets out of 20 companies, just keep interviewing there. The second thing that you can do, which is very good for your career, is talk to seniors out of your colleges, or people or through your network, or many different ways in which are operating in those companies. So they will give you a good understanding of what it lies once you actually clear the interviews. Is it something you really want to do? And then they also give you an understanding of what is the best way to um, enter the companies on that side as well, right? So these are two, I think, most important things that you can do for your career, that you can start doing now. You don't need to wait for you to graduate before you do that. Just reach out to the HRs in these companies and say that I'm interested. Even if those companies don't come to your campus and so on, it's fine, right? If these two things are not working for you, you've already given like 20 interviews, and you're not able to crack them, or the performances, you feel you can do it a lot better, and you're not able to really get into the network and do enough practices and other things. The second best thing that you can do is, like, join some of these companies as interns. A lot of them will actually give you that opportunity when you give interviews. When you give interviews, they'll say, hey, you're not up to the mark, do you want to join us as interns before you actually convert to full time and prove yourself? Because what questions get answered, and the experience in an interview is very different than what you work. If you The way that you work during an interview, if you work like that, uh, like steadfast every week after week, you can get converted inside the company. And again, nothing better than getting real world enterprise experience, um, than actually, like, joining a company and working there. So internships are like the just below the interview stage from an options and opportunity standpoint for you to work. I strongly suggest that don't do internship in companies that don't pay you. work in companies that pay you as interns, and they should pay handsomely because you're doing like real world development. And once you're as interns inside, push to learn the most and also get like the remuneration up to the mark, if you feel you're producing up to the mark there. And then the final thing is, if all three are not working for you, maybe you just need to chop up some of your skills in terms of technology, and courses are a good way to do that. There are many courses available for free, for paid, in the industry. Like, we live in an amazing time of YouTube and Coursera's and Udemy's and like of the world. So like shelling out those 2,000 rupees to upskill yourself on technology languages cannot go amiss. But make sure you just don't rely on those courses, but are constantly testing yourself on either coding platforms or through interviews or many other ways. So make sure you see an observed improvement in your skills uh, as you undergo these sort of courses and other things, right? There is no course to real world. You will have to test yourself on real world constantly to be able to land yourself into that job or that golden opportunity that you're looking at.
That is really very insightful. I wish I could have, had such masterclasses at back in my time. Somebody to guide like you, right? So it's really fun to hear you out, and absolutely, full of knowledge that that these are the things that we one should follow in order to, So it's pretty much an advice that one can, go ahead out there in the market and research on his own that what is of his interest, right? Firstly,
Yep,
so
it's an
it was
amazing
not
time for
there
that.
back in our time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting easier and easier, and like really really important to do that.
Absolutely. Things are out there. One has to just find out the right resource and just grab it at their own pace, right? So everything is
Yep,
right there. You just have to pick up the spoon
exactly.
and just eat it.
Yep, you're
So
absolutely
adding up to that, there's a lot of noise nowadays into the blockchain space, and there's a lot of noise that's happening into the full stack development, space as well. So so there's a massive demand for full stack developers in the markets nowadays. So what's your take on that? How's a full stack developer different from maybe a front end developer or an individual backend developer? Can you share
like.
something?
Sure. Like, as a company, we are focused on data in particular. So we do have full stack positions. We have a small team of folks which focus on full stack dashboard and application development for our customers. But that's a very small part of our entire company. And so take my opinion or feedback with a pinch of salt. And as I said, like, it's best to talk to someone who's deep into the space and is doing a lot of active development there. um, but what I can tell you is, like, there's always need for engineers who understand the fundamentals of engineering. So not just someone who has understood the design patterns of one space, but the more spaces that you learn and interact with, whether it's data, whether it's back-end engineering, front-end engineering, UX principles, there is a lot of value in engineers who understand, see sort of these multifaceted development. um, th- uh, so so that's that, and that which basically translates into like a full stack engineer is sort of the first stepping stone, where you understand backend and some UI development, at least maybe some database designs as well, which makes you automatically a lot more valuable because you have enterprise experience, or you need core engineering experience across these multiple spaces as an engineer. So there is a lot of value in just understanding that. And there are three reasons for it, in my opinion. I think one of them is just the more spaces you understand, the more you are able to generalize some of these opportunities. So when you actually go and, like, it was very interesting for me that I had done a lot of initial full stack development for a startup, like I talked about. And then when I did my own app development, I could see a lot of those principles applied to app development. And you could understand sort of how does that MVC framework that I worked on in the app space kind of apply to this sort of new space, and new structure and new design patterns. And you're able to adapt to these sort of new spaces much faster. So the more experience and wide understanding you have, the better you're able to apply these skills and are able to attack these sort of new spaces. So which is why it's good to kind of have that set of experiences. And then the second thing is just because you like full stack development as well as in general app development stays on the cutting edge of engineering processes. um, Most of the processes that you look at, whether it's CI, CD, A by B testing, a lot of these initial practices were developed for the full stack space first, and then they were evolved into other spaces overall, right? So again, getting exposure to these things makes you adapt to, like in the data space, data space still struggles to get really, really cutting edge CI CD development. App space doesn't have it because Apple takes 15 days to approve any changes that you make in the application, and there are very few applications that you can make live on the app as allowed by Apple. So a lot of these spaces sort of follow behind the full stack development from engineering processes and enterprise app development. So which is the reason that full stack development is in huge demand. But I would say any engineer that has cross functional skills, you can do app development and you can do data development, you can do data development and you can do backend development. So as many cross functional skills you're able to gather, the more valuable you are as an engineer, because you now are understanding the fundamentals of computing through these various mediums. That's just my 2 cents. Again, I don't work extensively in full stack space, so best person to advise you would be someone who deals a lot in that space. I think we lost Shakti again. Man, Bangalore internet is just killer.
Okay. So, hi, Mayur, Divya this side.
Hey Divya,
I'll continue from this. I hope I'm
uh,
visible and I'm clearly audible to you.
you're audible, but you're not visible, which is okay. If your internet is not good, you can keep your video off. That works for me. But
Now
yeah, I can
it's
hear you. Yeah, I can hear you and I can
so.
see you.
I'll continue because Shakti's net is like how Bangalore's network is. So let's
Yeah,
continue. So let's continue from their side. So tell me more about your company so that our audience can be the your
so
part of the startup.
I did, yeah, thanks, Divya. I did cover that already when Shakti was out. I
Yeah,
actually talked a little bit about Sigmoid, but just a brief refresher. We work
right.
extensively in data space, many opportunities with us in data ops, in data engineering, business analyst, and machine learning engineers. I encourage you to go to our website, www.sigmoid.com, and apply through our positions. We are still actively hiring, and kind of look forward for you to be a partner with us.
Okay, thank you so much. So, the last question, any last word of advice for our participations and listeners?
Sure. So I think just just my 2 cents would be, as I said, like get yourself real world industry experience as fast as you can. Uh, sit through interviews. Don't kind of shy away from. It's okay to go through interviews and get rejected. I don't know how many times I got rejected when I worked through interviews. So don't kind of shy away from that. And the second thing that I would say is, if there is a space that excites you, do not, and you're financially able to do that, then don't shy away from continuously trying to get into that space and learning that space. You are going to connect the dots going like backward. So like try things which really excite you and that interest you, even if you have to join some other companies or some other restrictions. Keep at it and make sure you're working in a space that you when you wake up in the morning, you don't feel like, oh, I again work. Like, you should feel
Right.
like that I'm excited to work, and at the age that you are, this is the golden time to be able to do that. I wish I was that age again, where I could again work in blockchain or anything under earth. So really enjoy this time and make sure that it's productive and you're contributing to the industry as a whole.
Okay. So thank you so much. That is so insightful, and thank you for all your faithful words. I hope that will work for others and for me as well. And thank you again, and thank you audience for joining us today. And sorry for the inconvenience caused. Okay. So thank
Sure.
you.
Happy holidays, people. Bye.
Happy holidays, you too, and happy New Year in advance.
Yeah. Same to
Enjoy
you,
your
folks.
time.
Bye.
Thank. Bye. Take care, guys.